between Russia and Ukraine that has been turned into an all-out invasion as we speak. Russian tanks, Russian airplanes, Russian missiles and artillery are battering the Republic of Ukraine in Europe. And everyone is asking that in 2022, would everyone or anyone expect such a macabre relationship between two European states? Is it a reminiscence of what happened in 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland? Or is something different? What is the history behind this? What has brought about all this and the cumulative occurrences that have actually brought us here? The effect of this has been very, 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 very pervasive across the world. Africans are feeling it. Ukraine being a producer of wheat and other resources like iron, especially iron rods, is going to be affected heavily by these attacks and this war. How is it? How are other countries going to be affected? The superpowers. You are talking about the United States. You are talking about alliances like NATO and other states in the region. The Russian rule, the individuals, Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. All these issues are going to be discussed. My name is Fidel Amachi Owusu, and I will be with Dr. Vincent Ajali-Mensah. He is a security expert. He is going to be that, and again, he's also a human rights activist. So there's human rights dimension to this particular crisis, and he is going to make sure that we delve into that. Again, Professor Bafo Ajimandua will join us on via Zoom, and he is a former UN Senior Governance Advisor. And also, we will speak to some Ghanaian students who have been caught up in this crisis and how they are faring. In fact, they are going to give us on-the-ground experiences and how they are coping with other Ukrainian citizens in this crisis. So, Doc, I'll move to you, but even before that, viewers, you can join us on Facebook via Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. When you dial in, you type in Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, you are likely to see us on Facebook. And again, your text messages are welcome through 0243-158653. 0243-158653. So I'll go straight to my guest, Doc. It is a sad situation, and even before that, I'll welcome you.
Very sad situation.
Yes, and Doc, why are we here?
We are here for a number of reasons. One, Ukrainian interest. Two, Russian interest. Three, American interest and Western interest. So it's been a long history, as you said. Ukraine, yes. Russia have long ties. They've been one country before Ukraine became independent in the 1990s, and for about 30 years now have tried to live a life on their own. And then suddenly they developed adversarial relationships because NATO seeks to get Ukraine to join the alliance. Russia will have none of that. So the point is there is a lot of history behind it, and the final point to make is that the tension between the two superpowers is what is now becoming reflected in Ukraine. Is now being played out in full force in Ukraine. So it's basically a geopolitical war. It's basically a proxy war. It's not essentially a Ukrainian heritage war. It's a geopolitical war that is being fought in Ukraine. Unfortunately, Ukraine has become the turf where this war...
I'll come back to you, Doc, yes, in the studio. But we have been joined by Prof. Bafo Ajimandua on via Zoom. Good evening, Prof. Good evening, Prof. Okay. Prof, good evening. Okay, Doc, you may continue.
Yeah, so as I was saying, it's basically a turf war between Russia on one hand and NATO led by the US on another hand. And Ukraine has become the victim of situations, because then that becomes the territory where the war is being fought. Now they are not going head to head, so it's a prosy thing. NATO alliance is trying to use Ukraine to test Russian resolve, to make sure that they are able to come closer to Russian territory. But you cannot also write off the Ukrainian national pride in this, because Ukrainians have also come to the point where some of the population just think they need to live as an independent country. They need to make the decisions they need to make. So they are fighting for national pride, but the bigger picture is a geopolitical game that is going on, and it's being played well. I think that the problem has been that the Ukrainian president and government didn't calculate properly, and unfortunately we are here.
Doc, let's look at, I mentioned Second World War. That's the major war we've had in Europe before this particular one. And Doc, what is the major difference we can draw from maybe one or two differences that we can draw that will make people be at ease that we are not in a Second World War situation?
Well, there are differences. The main difference is that Russia is not trying to control the world. Adolf Hitler seeks to control the world. The second thing is that in modern warfare, no country can even dream of controlling the whole world militarily or achieving that end through military means. So that's but what the danger is that when Russia presses the button and happens to attack any of the countries that is supplying weapons to Ukraine right now, including Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Germany, and those other countries. You heard that France just sees a cargo ship headed for Russia. Now, assuming those things begin to happen, and then Russia strikes any of those assets, or any of those countries strike a Russian asset, and Russia decides to reply, or Russia strikes and those countries decide to reply, and the NATO alliance gets in, then we are on the verge of the Third World War. But largely there are complete differences that Russia doesn't have a global ambition to control everybody.
And also perhaps we are not seeing any genocide. Anyway, Doc, so let's talk about nuclear armament. In all this actors all have nuclear armament, except for Ukraine, because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia became the sole successor of all the arsenals of the USSR. So Ukraine doesn't have. However, with the attitude of the West, and the West has a lot of nuclear weapons. We have, for France is in there, UK is in there, and the United States. Now, if this thing does not, or what is happening does not play out well, what is likely to happen, looking at the nuclear factor?
No, I mean, that's what I said, that if it results in that kind of war where NATO will have to, because if Russia strikes any of the NATO countries, by the NATO charter, they are all supposed to come to the aid of that country. Then definitely that is a large-scale war. And in that war, for the world, it will be a war of annihilation. Because then, when Russia is threatened, they will go for the nuclear bombs. And when they go for it, the other countries must go for it. And then we are in trouble. But I think that there is great responsibility. One of the things that is happening now is, given the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia, if you listen to Medvedev, he just made an announcement that Russia is going, once Russia is removed from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Russia is now not responsible for any of those treaties signed to protect the peace in Europe. It means that Russia is now at ease to, from a human rights angle, introduce the death penalty and to go against certain human rights principles. From a security angle, it's not bound by any of the treaties that member states of that organization are supposed to have signed. So then Russia can go on the line of a rogue state and decide to use certain things. And when that happens, global peace is threatened.
Doc, I'll come back to you. Professor Brafo Ajimandua has joined us via Zoom. Prof, good evening, sir. Good evening, Prof.
Hello.
Hello, Prof. Good evening,
Good
sir.
Evening.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Prof, you join us. We are discussing Ukraine and what is happening there. As a former senior governance advisor, I would like you to look at the individual level of analysis. The individual actors in this conflict, Putin and Joe Biden. What do you see as far as governance is concerned? What are they trying to do as individuals in their respective positions as they find themselves? And then we may add the president of Ukraine as well. What roles are they to play in this conflict?
Well, thank you. First of all, you are talking about the presidents of 3 sovereign nations, Biden for the United States, Putin for Russia, and Zelensky for Ukraine. These individuals are acting in larger contexts. Russia's President Putin certainly is coming from a superpower angle because Russia is considered a superpower. And the United States is acting in concert with the NATO allies, that is the Western European countries coming together to form the NATO, almost the equivalent of the European Union. And of course, Zelensky, as president of Ukraine, is more or less the victim in all this. So the individual personalities here may not be as important as the geopolitical issues that are being sorted out now on the battlefield. And as you know, these 2 countries, Russia and America, are members of the permanent, the Security Council, the permanent members of the UN Security Council, and therefore have a special position in the United Nations. Now, I heard my colleague earlier mentioning Medvedev renouncing more or less all the conventions Russia has signed with the NATO and some other allied countries like the United States. I hope he is not renouncing the United Nations Charter, for which he's a member and currently presiding as president of the Security Council. Because by what they are doing, and if what Medvedev is quoted to have said, if they were true, then certainly the Russians are looking for a completely new world order, an order that was engineered and perhaps dominated by the Western world, in this case the European countries and the United States. So it seems to me that with this military action in Ukraine, beyond the fact that they want to demilitarize Ukraine and also stop Ukraine from becoming a member state of NATO, the Russians are also looking to redraw not only international boundaries, but also the conventions that have guided international relations since the end of the Second World War in 1945. So it brings into play all kinds of issues that really will make all of us begin to rethink how nations have related since 1945, and maybe even going back to the conventions of 1844 and all that. So we are facing a very interesting and challenging times at the moment.
Prof, Biden's response, is it up to what your expectations were of him, that if Russia indeed invaded Ukraine, Biden would react the way he's doing? Are you surprised, or is there something you expect from him that he has not done yet?
Well, you see, he's in a very, very difficult situation. He has to be a little bit careful because the Americans are not dealing with a country like Ghana or Guyana or Venezuela and those kind of small countries. This conflict involves an equally powerful country. You see, if you listen to statements by Putin over the past few days, clearly they are very nostalgic about the dominance and then later the fall of the Soviet Union, and in that respect losing more or less their power and their status in the world. But over the years, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the early 1990s, I think they have cleverly taken time to rebuild their military forces and their armaments. So currently, as we speak, I'm not sure of what in the arsenals of Americans that the Russians don't have. And also, mind you, the Chinese are more or less supporting the Russians. And China is equally a superpower, even though they don't say that. So if these two countries are ganging up against the rest of the world, then the power of America will be severely tested. So this is not a child's play at all. Biden cannot be expected to behave like in the 60s or 70s or 80s when America was supposedly a superior superpower, so to speak. Now, the power between America and Russia plus China is almost balanced. So this is a case that whoever is the president of the United States or head of the European Union or NATO will have to approach with great care, because if any mistakes are made in this particular case, we can see what nobody wishes to see in the world, which is possibly the outbreak of a third world war. And nobody wants that. I don't think Putin wants that. The Americans don't want that. And therefore, I believe they will behave rationally in resolving this particular conflict.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Prof, I'll be with you shortly. Doc, at the heart of this is the fact that Russia does not want Ukraine to join NATO. Is it too difficult for the West to give such an assurance to Russia?
Well, it depends. There is a dilemma that nations face. If Ukraine doesn't join NATO, NATO's expansion, Prof said something that is very important. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and at the end of the Cold War, the NATO alliance became the only military force in the world that was bullying everybody. Now, suddenly, Russia rose under Vladimir Putin, reformed its military, and is able to stand up to them. Now, the result of that is the NATO alliance have been trying to encircle Russia on all fronts. And Russia cannot take that. They have to respond. And this is an example of Russian response. So NATO will not give Russia that alliance. If you listen to Biden today, he has said that any country in Europe that wants to join the NATO alliance, it is time to open to them. Which means that they are even now using this opportunity to appeal to people who want to join NATO. Now, one of the things we have to note in this equation is that, see, what Russia is doing now, Western countries have done worse of that. They went without Security Council approval to Iraq. You saw what happened in the Yugoslavia. You saw what happened in Libya and other places. So these superpower states have done this thing all over the place. Now Russia will do it. The reason why those of us in developing countries will hear Russia as the bad guy in this case is that you have an overwhelming Western media and press that will publish all the bad news about Russia and will never publish the role that they are playing. How do you go to a country close to Russia and supply them with javelin weapons, supply them with anti-tank weapons, Stinger weapons, and batteries that are supposed to disable tanks and identify UAVs and bring them down, those kind of things? Russia will not tolerate that. And you have been doing this for the past 8 years, has been supplying this to them, training them. You heard that even as at the time the war broke up, the German spy chief was trapped in Ukraine, in Kiev, and they had to take German special forces to go for him. You know, so it means that you have been at Russian doorsteps trying to provoke them all this while. That's why the Russian state is saying this war has been going on for 8 years. It is time to end it. So there are dynamics.
Okay, follow up.
Yeah.
In 2008, Russia entered Georgia, Republic of Georgia. It wasn't too successful, even though they choked something, and then there were some overt deficiencies with Russia's military and its strategy at the time. Now, we've come a long way after 2008. Do you think this operation is going to be very successful?
On the contrary, I don't know how we measure successful, because you see, I have been saying Ukraine should have learned from the mistakes of Georgia. Because whatever is playing out in Ukraine now seems to have been the same playbook the Western world made Georgia operated with. So it was South Ossetia. Georgia tries to take it. Russia declared them states and came to their defense. You saw what Russia did. In a few days, the war was over.
12 days.
Yeah. Now in Ukraine, it's the same thing. Breakaway regions, ask for Russian help. Russia is coming for it. I think that, yes, between Georgia and Ukraine, there are differences. Ukraine is the 22nd most powerful military power in the world. So they have some significant force to combat Russia, plus NATO support, except that they cannot fight the number 2 powerful state in the world. They can't do that. And with all the support, already they have reached your capital. You know, but there's another difference. In Georgia, Russia was going to just free those states. But in Ukraine, it seems Russia has a regime change end game in mind. So that's why they are going the way they are going. In Georgia, Russia didn't care about the citizens. In Ukraine, Russia wants citizen support. So they are careful not to hit civilian targets indiscriminately. So these are some of the dynamics that are happening. And in Ukraine, the government is planning for a guerrilla warfare against Russia, which means that they are in for the long haul. Russia is not prepared for that. What Russia will try to do is what you can read Putin trying to say. That, see, can I tell you something? Let's go this way. We are coming. We don't want to destroy Ukraine. We don't want to destroy Ukrainian infrastructure. So overthrow your president. If the military takes over in Ukraine, Russia is willing to withdraw. So how Russia plays that game is a different thing. The Western world is not willing for Russia to do that, to achieve that game. The president is now effectively in the mindset where he is appealing to people and say, please, can we get this right? Let's all fight. You know, let's all fight, which means that he's mobilizing the citizens to fight. In that case, it's a war for everybody, not the president. But if Russia tries to get some special forces to take out the president, the game changes. Good.
Viewers, the number is 0243-158-653. 0243-158-653. If you, it's on the screen, and if you would like to join the program, you can text and it will be read for the consumption of all. Prof, I hope you are still with us.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Prof, I'm looking at the United Nations. The United Nations, you've worked with them, and then I would like to know that with all these things happening, because after 1945, even though the superpowers have not agreed on so many issues, it's as if after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was some level of sanity on the Security Council. At least the veto, the use of veto was not so rampant as it used to be. There were instances after 9/11 that Russia actually supported the United States on the Security Council to fight terrorism. But with what is happening, how do you think, is it going to affect the credibility and the potency of the United Nations? Does it have that potential?
Of course it does. Very huge implications, possibly leading to some serious disruptions in the way the United Nations works, especially when there's a serious global security issue. You see, the point is that the United Nations was structured by the victorious powers after the war, the Second World War. And they created a system that gave veto power to the 5 leading powers at the time, who are permanent members of the Security Council. And this includes the former Soviet Union, what's now Russia. So the others being China, United States, UK, France, and Germany. So, no, not Germany.
United States. United States, yeah.
Exactly. So what is happening right now is that any decision to be made by the United Nations through the Security Council will have to be accepted by all the 5 permanent members. And Russia is one. I don't know if you saw yesterday at the Security Council trying to pass a resolution to call the aggression of the Russians into Ukraine. And incidentally, and very interestingly too, we found that there is a Russian, the Russian ambassador who is presiding as president of the Security Council. Yeah. So naturally, you can see them vetoing it. And not only that, China abstained, you see, in such a case. So with the inability of the United Nations to make any serious intervention here, because if the Russians are not willing to allow the United Nations into this picture, the UN can never enter. That's the way the UN has been structured. So what I see really is that the rest of the members of the United Nations will be frustrated by Russia's action. So Americans can as well be looking at NATO, where they are not bound by United Nations in terms of their action. That is why, as we know, the NATO countries have already activated for the first time their response mechanism. And they've already started lining up their troops at the borders of member states that are very close to the Russians. So all these are like a prelude. I mean, those who have studied world wars, you remember the Second World War, with the invasion of Poland, and the others were activated, and somehow unable to manage what emerged, then we found ourselves in the Second World War. So for me, it's a very, very dangerous situation. But my hope is that nobody wants a third world war, and therefore nobody is going to the brink, or when they get to the brink, they might withdraw. And I think if the NATO countries, as my colleague said earlier, can allow the Soviets to have their way in a limited sense in terms of avoiding the membership of Ukraine to the NATO, and also accepting that Ukraine will not be a militarized country, but at the same time ruled by their own elected president, I think we can find a compromise there. But as it is, to answer your question directly, I'm not sure how the United Nations can intervene in this particular conflict.
Prof, I'll take this opportunity to also ask about, you earlier mentioned about the fact that China abstained, and UAE also abstained with other countries, but Ghana took a position, and the position was that we actually condemned the invasion. What is your take on that?
Well, you see, I know that in these matters we try to act like neutral states. The so-called non-aligned movement that began in the late 40s after the Second World War and all that. And Ghana, through Kwame Nkrumah, was very prominent in the non-aligned movement, together with Egypt, Indonesia, and other countries at the time. But you see, today, the non-aligned movement, it really has no standing at all. It's very, very weak. They don't even meet anyway. So if you ask, why did Ghana take that position? First of all, I think we have to understand that there are certain key principles in international relations that if you forego, then you are opening up what you call the Pandora's box. And you don't know what's going to come out. Because see, what has happened in Ukraine, even if you are sympathetic to the Russians, mind you, they have invaded an independent sovereign nation, which means the territorial integrity of Ukraine has been breached. And Putin is using history to justify his action, despite the fact of NATO and all. He also goes back to history, recalling when it was a Russian empire became Soviet Union, and Ukraine has been part of it since then. So if you go back to that, and this was excellently put at the Security Council by Kenya before the vote. Kenya said, the Kenyan ambassador said, look, if we have to support this, then it's possible for all of us to go back to history and begin to revise our borders. It means the British can say, well, 2019, we took over Ghana, it was our colony, so we want to go back. Or even internally, the map of Africa will be very much changed. But you know, the AU has decided that we are not going back to the old borders. We accept as it is and move on. That was the principle behind the Kenyan ambassador's statement. So in the same way, Ghana is reaffirming its commitment to the core principle of international relations of respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of member states. That is why Ghana went the way it did. So in this case, it's not a matter of being non-aligned or non-aligned. It's just a principle that drove us to take that decision. And I think it was a correct decision to take.
Okay. Prof, before you go, so will that have any consequences, or Russia will understand that, oh, this is one of those things that countries do?
First of all, I'm not sure of any consequences at all. I don't think Russia is going to use this against Ghana. And even if it wanted to, there's nothing much it can do, because our ties with the Russians, the ties are not as strong as, say, with the Western countries. So it can be different. But overall, I don't think this is going to be a serious matter at all. And I think the principle is respected. It's just that in this case, the Russians want to act on their own. When everything is sorted out, they will come back to respect the principle of international relations.
We hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah. Prof, I'll come back to you. Doc, now, all what Biden is using his podium and his office to do is to met out sanctions. The Europeans are also sanctioning. In fact, they personally sanctioned the Russian president. That is quite unprecedented, because over the years they sanction associates, they sanction surrogates, they sanction firms and banks, but they don't really sanction the president. When you sanction the president, some people even take it as an act of war. What do you think about that? Sanctions?
Well, sanctions have, in the past, have some effect in cases like this. But we have seen the effect of sanctions in Libya. Libya developed under sanctions. Iran developed under sanctions. So if you hear the Russian rhetoric today, you say Western sanctions are impotent, you know. But the sanctions that are being poured out on Russia will affect countries such as Ghana and some of the small countries where national resolve is weak and strategic planning doesn't happen, and there's total dependency on the West. Unfortunately, Russia is not one of those countries. So sanctions, yes, it will affect Russia. But the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia are also sanctions that will bite Europe. You know, Italy depends 40% on Russian gas. What happens? So you see, Italy is one of the countries that is hesitant. But the way the global mobilization is going, it's difficult for countries to resist. Germany will suffer the consequences. So, but Germany has no option. Today they have offered to go back on their promise to supply weapons to Ukraine and all that. But if Russia is taken out of the SWIFT system, it's also going to affect Western nations seriously. Because, you see, if you look at the SWIFT system and the way it operates, I'm not a finance person, but the point is that there are Western interests in Russia. There are Western companies in Russia. They buy things from Russia. So if you take Russia out of the SWIFT system, how do you pay for the gas? There are Western NGOs that send money to Russia. How do you send money to Russia? But Russia can navigate those things. They have China, they have Iran, they have Kazakhstan, those countries. They have North Korea. They will physically go and carry money from those places. Their planes will fly. And if you drop a Russian airplane, fighter jet, it means you are declaring war on Russia. So Russia is going to largely survive those sanctions. It will affect them. It will, I hear they are planning to sanction the Russian central bank itself. That has problems. But so sanctions will work. But sanctions have proven, in the case of countries that have huge national resolve, to be impotent. If Iran survives, Russia can survive. If North Korea has survived, Russia can survive. And particularly when they are in Asia, where their allies are closer to them, they will survive.
Of course. Doc, thank you so much. Let's read some messages and go back to Ukraine proper to speak to some of those students who have been caught in this action. But before that, I'll read some messages from our viewers, as we always do. Ukraine, Russian President Putin has planned this invasion for years. He needed to have reached a consensus with U.S. President Biden, but agreement failed, hence the invasion. We hope the war will be ended soon. However, if it continues, NATO will be forced to enter this war. We hope not. Good evening, GTV. I am Abraham from Kaswa Amanfrum in Nano. I am enjoying the show, but I will be happy if you can explain the reasons for the Russian invasion. And then what is Russia looking for? I think that this message came earlier because Doc and the Prof have mentioned a number of them, but we will still maybe go over. And then, good evening, GBC. The world must do something about what is happening in Russia, Russia and Ukraine, or else we are likely to get in the Third World War. This is from John Kumasi. Okay. Good evening, panelists. Please, my brother is a medical student in Ukraine. Please, are there any plans by the state to evacuate the students and other Ghanaian nationals in Ukraine? He mentioned that he and his colleagues are heading towards Romania, and they are currently in the Romanian border, or on the Romanian border. Please help. My name is William from Akwasihu in the eastern region. Okay, I think that the authorities will get to hear this and then act quickly. Good evening. I think there is too much propaganda about the Russian and the Ukrainian issue. People have intentionally ignored Russian concerns. They mistaken Russia for Libya or Syria. Abdul Wakil from Tamale. Okay. Good evening, sir. I'm Stanley from Oyarifa. Please, can you educate me on what is really happening between Russia and Ukraine? The Doc and Prof have done a lot of work, but then maybe Doc will try and summarize. This war for President Putin is strategic in that he first issued stern warning to ward off all other things. But then there was silence around the world, and powers by the move is just a prank. Nevertheless, he can be taken down easily with collaborative effort of the powers that be. Okay. He's talking about NATO having the capacity to take down Russia. Okay. Baptist from Accra. I don't think Putin can achieve the idea of the Ukrainians army seizing power from their president. This is because the war is not against the Ukrainian president, but against Ukraine as a sovereign nation. And the purpose is to reunite Ukraine to be part of Russia. Okay, next time, please kindly add your name so that we can know you. Thanks for the education. I am enjoying the talk by Dr. Vincent. Continue the good work by Richard Usai. Okay, Dr. Vincent is my former lecturer. Okay. I don't think Putin can achieve the idea of Ukrainian army seizing power from their president. This is because the war, okay, that's a repeated text. I am Ajaman Dakwa at Malam. Mr. Hose, do you agree with me that Russia just don't want the Ukrainian president in power? And therefore, if the Ukrainian army officers decide to overthrow the president by themselves, the Russians will withdraw their troops for peace to prevail. Okay. Back, Viktor Yanukovych, who was pro-Russian, was also overthrown through protest. We will come back to that. And it's difficult to understand what Putin is doing. I want to know if NATO can't deploy their troops to support Ukraine since they declared their intentions to join NATO. We pray God intervene and save Ukraine. Yeah, this is Ben Lusover from Tama. Technically, they are not NATO members, so that is also another technicality that NATO must overcome in order to do that. And then, I really don't know what or who is at fault in between these two countries, which is in conflict, and to my understanding will affect us as a nation, Ghana, in terms of fuel price hikes. Alan from Gomoa Onyanzi, yes, that is the fuel price hikes, because Russia seems to be the second largest producer of the product at the moment. Anyway, we are going to speak to Lord Cordia Mcmahon. He is the president of the Global Union of Ghanaian Scholars.
National Union of Ghanaian.
Yeah, Global Union. That is what they have here. Global Union of Ghanaian Scholars. He's the president, and then I think he's in Ukraine. I hope Mr. Lord Cordia Mcmahon is with us. Hello, Mr. Mcmahon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Fortunately for us, we are all in the evenings, despite the different time zones. Sir, are you safe First of all.
Let me take this opportunity to first of all greet all your listeners and yourself for having me on the program. It's an honor, and we thank you for all that you do for the country and the people. Now, I am not in Ukraine, but I happen to be the Global Union of Scholars President, Ghanaian Scholars President. Oh. So we are coordinating from diplomatic fronts, from parents and concerned citizens, and then from the students and scholars' point of view. So
respectfully, where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from the UK.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but as I'm speaking to you now, I've just dropped the phone from the president of the Ghanaian students in Ukraine, who has just entered Romania with about 30 Ghanaian students, and some of them are still on their way. Buses are being arranged to get those who are left, particularly from the Sumy area. Most of them are leaving. Those who can't are in the shelters. It's a bit scary. So we're still working to see what can be done. As Professor Bafo said, and Doctor also said, Ghana, the situation is bigger than Ghana as a nation, and the airspace are closed. So there is no way Ghana can even ask for anyone to go in there and evacuate the students and the vulnerable students who are left scared and worried, particularly in Ukraine now. We are sure that this will not happen in Russia. We are not hoping that Ukraine or NATO will retaliate or throw any bomb into Russia, which will mean that we will have to evacuate our students from Russia as well. But we are careful and waiting. I have to be honest, it has been a worrying situation for all of us, particularly young students, some as young as 18 years, being sent into a Eastern European country where foreigners are not always welcome, but they are surviving. And then has not really done well for our people, we have to be honest. But this is where we find ourselves, and we're doing the best we can. Students have mobilized buses and trains, and some have joined the Ukrainian nationals moving from Ukraine, from the fire. And so this is where we are right now.
Okay. Can you tell us what is the good news so far? What is the good news so far with respect to Ghanaian students in Ukraine? What's the good news so far?
The good news so far is that through the good work of the students themselves, the student leaders themselves, the president in Ukraine, Mr. Bobby Asante, and his team, plus our brothers and sisters in Russia and other places, come together from their own coffers and organized the transport to move out. And we have gotten a lot of them. Some of them are moving to Romania, others are moving to Hungary, and there has been a team waiting for them at the borders to receive them into those countries. My understanding, or our understanding, is that the government is waiting to see if they can cross the borders. Then they will actually organize a national evacuation and get Ghanaian students from Romania, Poland, and Hungary back to Ghana, and Slovakia as well, back to Ghana. But for now, we need them to cross the borders first, and then the authorities will see how they can then mobilize. It is very important to note that it's a tricky situation for the students, because with this arrangement, it means that when you're crossing the border, you have to be careful as well, because when you cross the border and you're asked whether you want a short stay or a refugee status, and you go and choose a refugee status, it means you cannot leave that country until you are settled as a refugee. So we are advising them as well that they should be careful in all this, even though it's a scary situation, but don't go and make any wrong choices that will affect you. So the good news is some of them have been moved towards the borders, some have crossed over to other countries, so they have dodged the fire, but some are still in there, and we are doing everything possible to get all of them out.
With the ability or the ease or relative ease with which they can get to the borders of other countries, does it suggest that the Russian army is not necessarily targeting civilians?
I don't think it's an ease. I can tell you for sure. You can imagine everybody trying to leave. Like, for instance, in Ghana, if we were to be in Ghana, everybody trying to leave from Hafasini or Axim area there, right? And the whole area, western central region, from Greater Accra, everybody trying to move across. So some have been on the road for the past two days. So it's not easy. It's not easy at all for them. And then the fear. I believe, like Professor Bafo said, that Russia is making sure that the situation as it was in Georgia does not repeat itself. So they are not targeting civilians. But we've heard from the news and we've seen the pictures that they have actually hit some civilian targets. And we've also seen the Russian military on the ground moving towards a flat of blocks that we think they might have attacked civilians. I don't know, I'm not sure about that, but we saw videos of that. So, but we've not had much casualty in terms of civilians. So hopefully the target is not civilians, it's military bases as they claim.
Okay. Thank you very much. But for your last, what do you think? What would be your suggestion to the government?
I think, so this has happened before. As the president of the Global Union of Ghanaian Scholars, it's happened in China recently, 2 years ago, when the coronavirus issue came up. Ghana did not act. If you watch what happened in, Ukraine, America quickly evacuates their citizens. Britain did so. Most countries asked their citizens to leave, or they assisted them to leave the country. Ghana has never, ever taken our citizens serious at all. In this case, I'm speaking on behalf of students and scholars. Most of them have no family, no friends, relatives in this, foreign countries, and the only person or the only agency or the only organization that is supposed to help them are the embassies and the government of Ghana. But it looks to me, though, that the government has no plan at all for Ghanaians living in foreign land, especially students. And we have to look at this carefully. And we as a nation have to decide whether our human capital, these are students we are sending abroad to go and educate themselves, gain knowledge, expertise, and skills. Now, if they come back, they are coming to help us. This is human capital. But we don't have any plan to protect them, to encourage them, so that they will be useful tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Lord Cordia Mcmahon. Thank you so much. He is the president of the Global Union of Ghanaian Students. Thank you very much for your contribution. We will go to Kojo Pobi. He is the president of Ghana National Union of Ghanaian Students in Russia. He is in Russia. And Kojo, please, can you hear us? Okay, I think Kojo, we've lost Kojo, but we'll come back to him. Okay, greetings from, this is messages from viewers. Greetings, I'm Kofi Asante. Ukraine should just surrender. I'm supporting Putin. Okay, and then good evening, GBC. I'm Julius from Oyarefa, Accra. Please, I want to know if Ghanaian students in Ukraine can resume on duties, perhaps after the national evacuation. Israel occupation forces keep kicking people out of their houses, which under UN law is illegal. What are people doing about it? What are people doing about occupied West Bank by Israelis? Okay, the president of Ukraine thinks his country has been left alone to fight the invading Russian forces. This should be a lesson to all of us. We must always be careful and select the battles on our own strength and not that of others. From Abdul Majid, Blue Long, and then I'm Sheikh Labadi from Wa. The Americans and its allies should stop the so-called superpower thing and remove their security apparatus from Ukraine so that war can stop. Great analysis by your panel. Sheikh Labadi in Wapani. Good evening. I'm texting from Tamale. Please, can you tell me the country that is at fault? Thank you. Doc and Prof, if Prof is told that. Good evening, sir. I'm Biomac from Afuakun. Thank you for your good work. Done. But Russia and Ukraine issue must be handled with great care because it's a higher standard than they are at a higher standard than Ghanaians, so we should mind our own business. So he doesn't think that Ghana should have a position on the Security Council, even though he's a member. Actually, we are one of the privileged countries to be on the Security Council at this time. We are one of the 10 non-permanent countries, so at least they would like to hear from us. So we didn't rush there to talk. And then Kuntu Blankson, Putin invaded Crimea under Obama, and then dare not spark any aggression under Trump. And he now invades Ukraine under Biden. It's a communist-backed agenda, backed by China, North Korea, and Pakistan. Africa should start taking lesson note. If this invitation should be successful, it is going to be a Chinese invasion of Africa backed by Russia. Wow. And then sanction invaders. Sanctions do bite. However, countries under sanction do evade these sanctions for now, and the sanctions can be used as a first step to bring President Putin back to the negotiation table. Okay, we live to see that. And then Francis Hosu from Kwon. Putin has a rough and fierce countenance even when he smiles. Can Ukraine put him down? Anyway, I love Ukrainian bravery. And then Frederick Lassen in Takrady. Take a very critical look at Putin before the COVID pandemic and now. The man looks paranoid, frail, appears less calm as he used to. I don't know, but I think there's a psychological issue with the man. Even the so-called history he gave as justification for this needless invasion is just mind-boggling. This is Frederick Larson in Takrady. And then I am Patricio from Cape Coast. Ghana government needs to be proactive to save our citizens in Ukraine. I'm not happy with the statement made by the Deputy Majority Leader of Parliament that if Ghanaian life is lost, we will hold him, and that if any Ghanaian life is lost, we will hold him accountable. Good evening, sir. My name is Gate Ebenezer, a student of Methodist Senior High School. Please, I am enjoying the program as a student. My question is, what is the main problem or confusion that has caused this Third World War? And then, why is it that China have stayed out of the war? And then, will Russia rise against Ghana because of the support Ghana is providing, or the statement Ghana made? Okay. I think the messages are very many. We can't read all. Doc, coming back to this, Doc, you've heard so many of these questions. Can you wrap them up and then maybe say your final words so that we bring the questions before we go to the Prof, and then we end the show.
Thank you. One, what is really happening? What is happening is a tension between Ukraine and Russia that has escalated. One, the fact is that in the 8 years, Ukraine has prepared and has attacked Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. And in the separatist region, they've closed down radio stations that are critical of them, which is itself a human rights issue. And finally, the separatists ask for Russian help. They have to go there. Russia has a vested interest. Ukraine is a resource-rich country. Every country wants to have a bite of the resources and be in control. Now, one of the things that is happening is that Russia is trying to send a message that we no longer live in a unipolar world, we are in a bipolar world or multipolar world at least, because America has been going unilateral all this while Russia is going
Doc,
unilateral.
this is not to cut you. We have one of our citizens in Ukraine joining us. This is Benjamin from Ukraine. Hello, Benjamin.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Benjamin, please, are you safe?
Well, we can't say we are safe. We are not safe. But where I am, I think that
you are relatively safe.
I just say I'm okay for now. For now, but we are not safe.
Yeah, you are giving an uneasy smile. Benjamin, what is happening on the ground?
Well, as of now, I'm in the. I think that just before you called me, and I heard my senior Lord Mcmahon, who is the president of Global Union of Ghanaian Students, talking about the city of Sumi. Yes, the situation here is that the city of Sumi is one of the cities that has been heavily attacked. We have heard bombings today. We have heard certain shots gone through the streets, and so for us as students, it's not safe at all.
So you hear flying missiles and artillery?
Not necessarily flying missiles. I'm said what happened was that we heard that there was a train that was traveling through our city to one of the very good cities, or should I say relatively cool cities. And so as Ghanaian students, we thought that this was an opportunity for us to be able to move out of the city and find shelter or safety somewhere else. But when we went there, we couldn't get the train. We stood there for maybe an hour or two, and then we couldn't get the train. So what we tried to do is then to come back home, and you know what has happened. I believe that we have all heard that the President Zelensky has given the opportunity for people 18 years and above to handle weapons to defend their country. So right before my very eyes, we saw people with guns who were walking just beside us. We saw them. But thankfully, they didn't harm us. They came for a mission, and since we were not part of the mission, they didn't do anything to us. But I mean, just by our sides, when I think that one of them suspected something, they fired a gun, and you can imagine the kind of fear and panic that came into us when, for the first time, it wasn't a movie. We heard it with our own ears, a gun being, fired right before us. So the kind of fear and panic that was in us was huge. So.
So it means that if you are then a foreigner, you are not under any compulsion to hold guns or to, join the forces, the Ukrainian forces, right?
Yes, of course. No foreigner is under compulsion, and not even compulsion. No foreigner would want to join and fire any guns for them. The situation is between the two countries, so the two countries will handle it themselves.
No. If you were to give advice to your fellow colleagues in Ukraine, what would be the best option? Is it to move out and run to one of the borders and get stuck there, or to find some basement and hide for some time to see how things will turn? What would be the best choice?
Now, the best choice depends on the situation in which you find yourselves. There are cities that are relatively easy to move, so you'd expect that if they have the opportunity, they should make that movement and then, get to the borders where we know, we have heard that there are support systems in Poland, there are support systems in Hungary, there are support systems in Romania. But in my city, for example, when I have said that tonight we have seen someone fire a rifle, the best thing for us to do right now is to stay grounded and hope that the situation will be calm. Right now, we are living in a time of uncertainty. We have seen people, we have heard bombings with our ears and see people shoot. So you don't know, you can't say that I want to travel, I want to go. You don't know what is happening outside, and the fear of unknown is even worse than the fear of the known. So you would want to be in your room, get into the bomb shelters, seek safety, which you know, and hope that the situation will come under control before, if you have an opportunity that has been organized by the authorities and then you are quite positive about the issue, you decide to leave. But now my advice to the people in my city is stay calm, stay in your bomb shelters. This is what you know, and this is what has given you safety for now. Don't try to leave the city when you don't even know what is happening outside. That will be the worst case scenario, scenario for us.
Okay, I understand there are several of you, let's say if I can use the word scattered across Ukraine. You are in different cities, pursuing different programs in different schools. Now, how do you foresee a government rescue mission from Ghana coming to evacuate you back home? How difficult would that be, and how simple would that be if it is going to be simple?
probably I'll use a different word. It will be complex.
Okay.
It will not be easy. It will not be easy, and it will not be extremely difficult.
Okay.
Why? Because, like I said, the situation is different in different cities, right? Right now, as people have been able to move to the borders, and so people have been able to find shelter there. So one way or the other, these people have, I mean, the government of Ghana definitely, and also with the, like Mr. Lord Mcmahon was saying, the government together with other people have been able to get buses, and then people have moved. That is the situation. In my city, it is going to be extremely difficult. Why? Because now it depends on where you want to get the bus from. Right now, because of the state of emergency in the city, there are no flying planes even in the country, and in my city there are no major transport services that are happening. So it's going to be difficult to get a bus, which we believe is the best is the best form of transport. Now we are looking at a train. The train too is not working. So where are you going to get the bus? That is the situation. And if you get the bus, what route is the bus going to take? Okay. That is also another situation. Okay. And the third factor is that, of course, the money comes in. So it's more of a complex situation. But maybe the government of...
More importantly, what is your food supply situation? What are you surviving on? You are going to be in a bomb shelter. You can't be there and starve. So what about that? Do you have enough supplies? And what have you heard about other friends of yours?
We don't have enough supplies. That's the truth. People have been able to stock, but how long can this food keep us? I would give or take, it is just going to take us about 1 week. So that will be that is the situation here. So if we talk about food supplies, I think the last time people were able to go out freely to get food was I would say Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. But how long will it keep us? Today is Saturday. We are in today. Yeah, it's Saturday now. So give or take, by Monday the food supplies generally will go down, and that will be another thing to look at now.
Benjamin, we are very sorry, but what will be your last word for us?
Well, my last words for us is for, first and foremost, I would speak to the parents that are back home. We, as your words, are in a difficult situation. But I want to encourage you as a parent. When you call, please be strong for your child. We know that we are in a war zone. Things are not looking very good for us. But what we want from our parents, if they are able to reach us, is not to scare us. We are in a difficult situation. We need strength from each other, psychological strength. So when you call, if you are a Christian, you believe in the Holy Scriptures, you go to your Bible, you see Psalm 91, you quote it to your child, you pray to your child, and encourage him that, look, I'm not there with you, but you can do something about the matter. The best security now is yourself. And these are the kind of things that I, as a PRO, would entreat all parents to do. When you call, please encourage your child. For the people that are here, we have got to be strong. We have not been in this situation before. But what I can tell you is that our failure, our greatest failure, is when we don't try. This is not the time to cry. This is not the time to wait. We have got to be strong for our own selves. And in the time, or we hope that in the near future we'll get out of this. We individually, as I always call people and tell them, if you are a Christian, I believe that just like Daniel and his 3 friends, they were found in a different city. They prayed to their God. God answered. The same God of the Old Testament is the same God of the New Testament. He can do it for us. So as a Christian, go to your knees, pray to your God, be confident in the Holy Scriptures, and God will intervene. It will look like, oh, this is a situation where God cannot come. But faith doesn't count contradictory physical evidence. Wow. We have got to be strong for our own self and make a move for our own self. So have faith, of course, and the Bible says faith without works is dead. Have faith and also listen to your leaders. If there's an opportunity for you to move, do exactly that. And we hope that we will get out of this situation. We are strong now, even though it's difficult. We've got to be strong. We will be strong and hope that things will get better. And hopefully with the Lord's help and with interventions from different places, we will get back to our country safe and sound.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you. So that's Benjamin Watson. He's a student in Ukraine and a Ghanaian citizen. And then he is He's giving us the situation as he's experiencing over there. And one particular point is that parents who have wards or children in Ukraine or relatives in Ukraine, kindly when you call, don't scare them. Because as he's saying that the situation is not good, but at least they can find some bomb shelters to hide. And those who are able to, who are lucky to find themselves in areas that are not so much caught up into the conflict, they are also good. So until the government goes to evacuate them, please, whenever you call, encourage them rather than, scaring them away from their souls. Thank you very much, Ben. Doc.
I don't know how much to say, but I want to say that for now, it appears the collective security architecture is being tested, is being stretched. America is hoping that Russia will also be drawn into a long haul like America has experienced in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places. They are hoping Russia will have similar experience in Ukraine. We pray that it doesn't go beyond that. I would like to mention that this also comes at great human cost to the citizens of Ukraine and of Russian soldiers. There is going to be refugee crisis that Europe will suffer from. There is going to be all kinds of human rights issues, abuses, and all that all over the place. We just hope that this geopolitical warfare will not change into something more complicated.
Okay, Prof. Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof. We would like to take your final words, Prof. Okay, I think we've lost Prof, but succinctly, it is a sad situation, especially when you have countries you hear far away having issues, and then you realize that your citizens are also caught up in it. We live in a global village. Every problem of one person is a problem for you. And so we should wish the best for the situation so that the situation doesn't escalate. These are countries that are... Hello, Prof.
Hello.
Yeah, Prof, please, we'd like to have your last word. And please, hello, Prof. Yes, please, we'd like to have your last word and factor in the government's effort towards evacuating students back home. Hello, Prof.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, Prof. Prof, please unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. Oh. Hello, Prof. Okay, we lost Prof. Yeah, so as I was saying, the situation is that bad, so we should pray for the best so that this doesn't escalate, because these are countries that have nuclear weapons, and the potential of this turning into a nuclear Armageddon, we don't wish. We hope that all those actors involved are rational, but sometimes rational actors can make some mistakes and make calculations that can be very dire for the entire world. Today, I was joined by Dr. Vincent Ajali-Mensah. He's a security expert and human rights activist. We were also with Professor Bafo Ajimandua. He is a former UN senior governance advisor. Thank you so much. We were also joined by Mr. Lord Cordia Mcmahon and Benjamin Watson from Ukraine. He is a student there, and they give us a lot of news. That thank you very much for the contributions that our viewers also made. We were not able to read everything, but then join us next week. We might do a follow-up on this particular topic. So join us next week, same time. My name is Fidel Amachi Owusu. Good night.